Hello and welcome to the Single Today podcast. This is episode 10. We made it to double digits. If you've been following along, thank you for joining us. If you are brand new, welcome. This is a special episode because this episode comes out the week that my very first book, Single Today, is available to the world. I got a shipment of them sent to my house this week and got to actually hold them and feel them, not just the galleys. Although we love the galleys, I got to hold the actual one, and I'm telling you, it's so cool. And so wherever you are watching this from, I would love for you to go pick up a copy of Single Today and let me know what you think. It's really the context of all of this podcast. This podcast will make so much more sense if you first read the book. And so I want to get into episode 10. This one is called Here's Why I Wrote Single Today. But before I do, quick announcement is our third and final Galley giveaway. We got to give this literal Galley to somebody. Thank you all for all of you who have participated in these Galley giveaways. You're helping me get the word out about this book, and that just means the world. Our third and final winner is Carrie O'Connor. Carrie, thanks for all of your help, and we will send you this book this week. Congratulations. And now, let's get into this. Episode 10, Here's Why I Wrote Single Today. Because that's the question I always want to know. Like whenever I read something or watch something, I'm always thinking like there's the thing that's created, but then there's the thing behind the thing created. Like there's the story, and then there's the story about that story being created. Right. And to me, the story behind the story is oftentimes just as interesting, if not more interesting than the actual story. And so if you, like me, enjoy hearing about the backstory of things, I want to do that today for this book, Single Today. Why did I write it? Well, I want to start with the opening line of chapter 1, which if you are watching this on YouTube, is right here. You can see it is italicized, and I italicize lines when it's my own inner dialogue all throughout the book, because that's one of my favorite parts about writing is you can let the reader in on the situation, on the story, but then you can also let them in on the conversation going on internally in your own mind. And so the book opens with a line in my own head, and the line is simply this: is there something wrong with me? That question started this whole journey for me. Have you ever felt that way? Ever felt like there is something wrong with you? Ever wondered late at night if that is true? Well, in this moment in chapter 1, I'm sitting in an empty parking lot on a Sunday night, feeling completely numb. Like I can't name a single emotion I'm actually feeling. It was like my emotional center was just frozen over. Like, you know, when you leave your phone out in the cold for too long and it gets so cold that it just freezes and it shuts down, and your phone's like, nope, sorry, no more phone calls for a while. That's what my soul felt like. It was just numb. I couldn't put my car in drive literally, but I also couldn't move forward metaphorically. And it was all because I didn't know how I felt about being single. I was in my mid-20s. All my friends were getting married, and I was so excited for them. There was a summer where I was in like 4 weddings, like back to back to back to back. It was so much fun. I loved celebrating them. And like the truth was, I was super comfortable on my own at the same time, but I also didn't know how to express that. Like I couldn't communicate it very well. And so like that didn't seem like a viable option for anybody else. And so it didn't feel like a viable option for myself. It's like I was presented 2 options. Maybe you can relate with this. Option 1 was the way of the church, which at the time, especially being a young pastor, being in ministry, like spending my days at the church, and then I was at a seminary at night. Like in both of those places, it was like everyone who wasn't married was trying to be. And that's great. right? Like that's awesome. Like I say on repeat on this podcast, I'm a huge proponent of marriage. Marriage is God's idea from page 2 of the Bible. It's not good for us to be alone. So that's a good, healthy desire. I just didn't have that desire at the time. And so everyone just sort of assumed that I was in the option 1 category, except I didn't really want to be in option 1. The problem was the only other option out there was like the way of the world. Let's call it hookup culture. Like just hang out, hook up, have fun. Don't worry about the fact that this is obviously causing a ton of pain and heartache and hurt. Like, if you just don't think about it too much, just push those feelings aside and have a few more nights out with friends. Like everything's going to be fine, right? Like that was the narrative that I had another group of people trying to tell me. And I knew enough, even at that point, to know that that wasn't it either. Like that we are all made in the image of God, and that sex is a gift from God for the context of marriage, and that temporary fun isn't going to satisfy like the deep longings and cravings for connection that we have in our soul, like any more than a Band-Aid can fix a massive wound. And so option 2 was out for me. But the problem was, as I sat in my car asking, is there something wrong with me? Is that I felt like I was out of options. Like I felt like if it was a multiple choice test, it was A or B. I didn't see an option C. I didn't hear anybody talking about option C. And in the church, like singleness was only ever taught as this like temporary season that you just have to power through. Like, hey, here's how you can survive until you get there. It took me a long time to stop and go, wait a second. Here's how you can survive until you get there. What if there's a way to thrive right here? And I was skeptical of that idea at first, but it was enough to at least allow me to put my car in drive home, determined to go figure it out. And so that's where the book begins. And from there, I go to counseling, and I have a lot of really honest conversations with a lot of trusted friends. I do a lot of my own inner work. Then I do a lot of research from other streams of Christianity that are really good at celebrating singleness. And you start to realize that, by the way, 2 like pretty big players in the Bible, Paul and Jesus, if you've heard of them, they were both single. And so I started to realize that there was this option C, that there was this place that we can be as single people, where if you desire to be married, I'm cheering for you, and I want that for you, and I'm pushing you toward that. But in the meantime, if you are single today, hence the title of the book, Single Today, what does it look like to not just try to survive until you get there, but actually learn to thrive right here? So why did I write Single Today? At the most basic level, this book is the story of my journey of realizing there's a third option, a much more beautiful and robust approach to singleness that allows you to actually be content today. And if you desire to meet someone and be married, you may meet someone else along the way who's also been putting in that same work to be single today. And the 2 of you may realize that you make a great team. And without, like we talked about in episode 9, putting each other on too high of a pedestal of making gods out of each other, you may find that marriage, you're way more set up for a marriage where you put God at the center, and then you become this team of 2 that helps move the kingdom forward. And if that happens for you, amazing. And if it doesn't, great. Either way, you'll be fine. That's the beauty of the Single Today message, because when you can learn how to put down yesterday and surrender tomorrow, you start to realize that there is a whole lot of life waiting to be lived today. So that's the why behind the book at the most basic level, because I want people to know you don't have to just survive until you get there. You can thrive right here. But here's what I love about this book. It starts at a very basic level, be single today, and then it just keeps digging and digging and diving. I'm mixing metaphors. I don't know if you want to dig or dive, but either way, the book's going to help you do that. Another layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. And so to practice what I preach, I want to do the same right now. Here's a deeper reason why I wrote this book, Single Today. A truth about me is that I'm an incredibly private person. I'm a huge introvert who at times has a difficult time expressing what's really going on. Like, okay, when I'm around people who can freely share and express how they're feeling in the moment, like in real time, I feel like they're doing a magic trick. I really do. Like they know some cheat code to life that I haven't learned yet. And I've been trying. This podcast, by the way, is me practicing, and I'm getting better at vulnerability and authenticity and all of that. But it certainly doesn't come naturally to me. So while some people can just talk about how they're doing, I have to sit in coffee shops for 4 years and write it all out. That's what this journey has been for me. It's way easier for me. It's safer for me because I can edit and revise and sit with the words for a while and like really figure out what I'm trying to say. Writing just comes a lot more naturally to me than speaking, especially speaking in a conversation. By the way, natural doesn't mean easy. Remember, this book took me 4 years to write. So shout out to anybody who's in the middle of writing and is like, what are you talking about? It's not easy at all. No, I know. It's one of the hardest things to do in the world. It's just that I prefer to communicate that way. It's really a beautiful way that I've learned for me to share a part of my soul with the world. So to the one listening who is writing, keep going. Like to anyone who's ever asked me though about singleness or about relationships or about loneliness or about the future and worry about the future or about shame from the past or any other topic that comes with singleness, this book is my answer. It's my best, well thought out response to all of it. And especially meant to anyone who has ever wondered, is there something wrong with me? This book is my best attempt to sit in that space with you, to let you know you aren't alone, and to hopefully offer up some good things to be thinking about along the way. Because at the end of the day, whether you are single, dating, engaged, or married, the truth is we are all in this together. All of us, humans. Like, man, aren't we so good at drawing lines? And pushing each other away and competing and critiquing and comparing. But beneath all of those silly games us humans play, it's always been about community. It's always been about us being in this together. Whereas God says on page 2 of the Bible, it's not good for us to be alone. And so this is the best contribution I know how to make to the conversation. My best way to help people feel less alone. And I mean that as like a labor of love. I sat in coffee shops so many early mornings and so many late nights because it would always be before and after work with a heavy heart, knowing how I was feeling and figuring that other people were probably feeling the same way, going, if I can just create something that will help somebody know they're not alone and maybe open up the door for some more good, healthy conversations to happen, then that will be enough for me. And I hope in some small way, it helps you realize that you aren't alone and that today doesn't have to be like yesterday, that it's a new day, that God loves you. Like, look, you didn't mess things up. I'm going to say that again. You didn't mess things up. You may feel like you did. There may be some consequences to whatever you did. God may have to reroute you a little bit. Your GPS may have just added a few extra minutes to the route, but you didn't mess things up so much that God has moved on from you. Stop it. You aren't better at sinning than God is at saving. I just want people to know that. I just want people to know that God's not done with you yet. That is why I wrote Single Today. At some surface level, I want you to know you don't have to just survive until you get there. You can thrive right here. But at a deeper level, this is me being my most authentic self, my real self, going, here's how God made me. I don't know why, but I'm not always good at sharing my thoughts in real time. But man, I can sit in a coffee shop and craft a paragraph for you. And I just kept doing that over and over and over again. And 4 years later, this is what came out. And so that is what I wanted to say to this community of podcast listeners. And may I just say, like, I don't say this lightly, like community, this community is what I foresaw right from the jump of writing this thing, is people reminding each other, hey, you're not alone. That there's not something wrong with you. Or how about this? Yeah, of course there's stuff wrong with you. There's stuff wrong with all of us. It's kind of the whole point. A bunch of imperfect people pursuing a perfect God who made a way for us in the middle of all of our imperfections to be with God. And so wherever this podcast finds you today, wherever you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, may I just offer this up as a labor of love. You're not alone. That you are not alone in your loneliness, that God is with you in this moment, that there are other people in this world praying for you, that I am praying for you, and that we are all in this together. And I hope that's the message people realize once they finish the last page of Single Today, which, by the way, I would love for you to read it all the way through and let me know what you think. Guys, it's a big week. Yeah, I'm so excited. Help me get the word out. Help spread this around. Help spread the book around. There's a YouVersion reading plan, 5-day reading plan, and some other fun stuff coming out this week. And so thank you to the Single Today community. I love you guys. It's time to launch this book.